Hi there. So running through my unit plan, I was focused on fourth grade social studies, specifically focused on the three branches of government. So in my unit plan, I focused in on identifying the roles of the three branches of government, describing how the elected representative bodies function in making local and state laws, identify the services performed by local and state governments, and explaining the voting process. So I only wanted to focus on those because I felt like if I filled it with everything under this kind of umbrella, it's a bit overwhelming to do all at once. So to shorten it, I kind of picked those because they seem to go nicely together. For my unit plan as well, the students would understand that the government is divided into three branches, so the power and responsibility are shared, and people's voices are represented in government through elected representatives. That voting also prevents individuals from having power without consent of the people, and then voting is an important civic duty of American citizens. So I want to make sure that students walk away from this knowing why we're learning about this, like why is this actually important and applicable in my life. Moving on to essential questions. These are also going to pop up throughout the lesson plans I show in a few minutes. But the essential questions are: how did America's government make itself different from the English monarchy that they left? How are laws made and who makes them? How are we a part of the voting system slash three branch system? And how does the government impact our everyday lives? What students will be able to do or to know, they will be able to identify the three branches of government, their roles, and the importance of having the three branches. They will also be able to identify the roles of the national and state governments and how they are similar but responsible for specific aspects of the law. There's a reason why they're different and split up. And then students will be able to identify the purpose of voting and why it is important for them to vote and participate in the democratic system when they are old enough to. The assessments, my favorite is a summative assessment because it kind of pulls from all of the four objectives and goals that I had before. The summative assessment would be at the end of this unit, the students will complete a project where they will choose one of the three branches of government, describe its role in the three branch system, and the students will connect the branch they've chosen to the voting system. Like, how does voting influence the positions that are in the branch? So kind of pulling everything together, which I think would be pretty cool. For formative assessments, they're going to have homework each night. They'll turn in a web quest, which is one of our lesson plans. There's going to be a short matching quiz involved, and students will also complete daily self-reflections in their learning journals to evaluate how comfortable they feel with the material, which I feel is very important, and that's something that I want to include in the routine of my students for a whole day of learning, not just for this specific content area. For the third stage of the learning plan, the lessons will be taught through this unit. I'll get to that one next, kind of go into each of them, but there's 4 lessons in this unit. The different experiences that those students will be able to participate in will involve lots of technology and collaboration and group work. Again, I want to save going into them for the lesson plans itself. And then finally, what of these learning experiences would best lend themselves to online format or face-to-face? And I tried my best to make it able to go both ways, to be able for students to work from home and for students to work in person with a little bit of collaboration in between. But I do realize there's some difficulty when having a hybrid classroom, and that I tend to lean more to face-to-face format because that's what I'm used to, and I like a lot of collaboration and group work, and it's easiest in that setting. So while all lessons should be able to be performed in both online and face-to-face format, I do kind of see it being easier in a face-to-face format. So moving on to the lesson plans. Starting off with our first one, we started off with a web quest. I really think it's a great way to get students intrigued in the content without me just kind of blabbing to them all day. So letting them explore what we're going to talk about through various, links and experiences. So in this web quest, the students are looking specifically into the 3 branches of the government and why they're separated and different responsibilities each of them have. And the students will ultimately then present this information to each other and complete a graphic organizer as well. So the students will be working in groups. I tend to do a lot of group work. I love having students work together. So online they would have their own kind of Google Meet group, and then in person, obviously physically sitting together. But they will work on creating a graphic organizer following directions, as starting with a video of Tim and Moby, moving into a game, and then finishing up with a little bit of just, searching through a website, doing some reading as well, kind of pulling different skill sets and pulling different experiences for the students to be able to acquire the learning. At the end, oops, sorry, I scrolled too far. The students will then come together and present parts of their graphic organizer on a slideshow. Moving on to the next lesson, all of these are 40-minute lessons. This one kind of piggybacks off the last one. It's kind of me going back and making sure that everything that happened during the web quest, the students have the information solidified and make sure that that information is correct so we don't continue on with any false knowledge. This one is a little bit more of a lecture, which I tend to dislike, but I see its relevance in some parts of education and also for some students learning. So in this, the students both in class and on Zoom will have access to the agenda on our Google Classroom, and they will be following along through, we'll start with a Kahoot, which I think everyone finds fun, to kind of recap some of the main ideas, which are the 3 branches of government and why each branch, or what responsibility each branch has. And so that we'll do the Kahoot review, and then we'll come into doing a kind of skeleton note presentation. And I'll have the presentation, the slideshow on the Google Classroom for if there's technical difficulties at home, if for some reason at school something's going on, the students will have the hard copy of the notes, but I want them kind of following along and filling in skeleton notes as they go. And those will be Google Notes as well. So students in class can take regular notes if they'd like, but it's just easier to save paper and type it up. This one focuses further on especially how laws are made, and we go through the lawmaking process as well, which I think is really cool, and the kids will actually get a chance to be a part of that in the fact that they are going to vote on the class rules. The people at home are going to be the House of Representatives, the people in school are going to be the Senate. They get to come up with their proposed laws, and then they're going to vote on them as they do in the actual law making bodies. And then I will be the president who will sign off, and we'll have like a completed list together. And then at the end, they will submit a ticket out the door matching each branch to their responsibilities and the people who are in the branch. Following up, we go into the 3rd lesson, which the students will be focusing on how the elected representatives function in making local and state laws, and how services performed by local, and to identify the services performed by local and state governments. And this one here is going to be more of a kind of working as a group, again, to fill out an organizer of things they already know, and then focusing on local level and state level, or as we had been talking about federal. The students will be able to use their textbooks to fill in the information, as well as using Google, and then the students are going to become experts on their particular level of government to then present to their peers in like a jigsaw sort of activity, which again might be complicated for online, which I'm trying to work out the kinks for, but ideally it would still work for online in the sense that they might meet up with each other and do a Google share, and like they break out into breakout groups to work individually. In person, obviously a bit easier. And then at the end, the students will write a short paragraph explaining what they think is the most important aspect of each sector of government and why they think that. This, again, is going to be through the Google Classroom, keeping everything kind of in one place, centrally located, so that each student has access to everything they need in one place and know where to find it. And finally, our last lesson is on voting and the voting system. The students will kind of participate in a simulation for this one, which I think should work just fine online and in person, because I will project and share my screen for like a group of choices. It'll have more impact on the people in class because it's directly affecting them. but it'll be like shoes on, shoes off, lights on, lights off, and the students will vote. The majority is what we'll do. So if the majority of students vote for shoes off, everyone's taking their shoes off. That's the rule of the classroom now. And during that experience, certain students will not be able to vote, so they can have a comparison of, oh, I didn't like not being able to have my say in this. Like voting is important because I could have my voice heard. Kind of putting it in perspective instead of just focusing on the right to vote. By taking it away, they're able to recognize why it's important and why people fought for the right to vote. So at the end, the students will be, at the beginning, the students will complete a Google form to choose their warm-up. That's kind of the start to the voting. And then they'll have a slideshow showing them choices that they can make that impact the classroom environment. Again, something that I feel like will be a little less effective in the virtual realm, but I'm trying to figure out a way it could work. And then the students will kind of share their feelings at the end, kind of realizing that voting is important and connecting it to their the representative bodies that we've talked about before that have voting in place and why it's important that they have it in place. So a lot of my lessons incorporated technology because I was trying my best to. Looking at the other questions, using backwards design, I started all my lessons with the standards and kind of worked from there, the goals, what I wanted the students to learn, and then kind of created my assessments as I went along, figured out how I could assess their learning based on what I wanted them to learn. For my lessons incorporating assessment, I always had a little assessment tied into it. At the end, I kind of explained a few of those. Hybrid learning, I tried my best to make it Google Meet friendly and having everything on Google Classroom with links that students could interact with and use on their own. For engagement, I tried to include games in my activities on most days, if not engagement with other students to discuss and also view videos, kind of mixing it up so the students weren't just being fed one medium of learning. They kind of had it mixed up and had opportunity to work independently with technology or work with others with technology or just work through various ways. And then finally, what I learned while planning this unit and what I'm proud of the fact that I did a unit plan. As I said, I think in my reflection paper, this was the first time I did a unit. I've always done the lesson plans, but I've never like fully gone through and made the content, and it was something that honestly scared me. So I'm honestly very proud that I was able to do it, and it honestly flowed a lot better than I thought it was going to. I was a bit worried that things were going to seem choppy, but it actually worked out okay. Something I learned while planning this unit was how, I wouldn't say how easy it is to plan a unit, because it was very difficult. I was very stressed kind of finding ways to use technology. But I realized how much I am kind of based on collaboration and how there's many different ways out there to involve collaboration, but also work online as well, which I was a bit, again, worried that I wouldn't come across, because I am very much a collaborative, like having the students collaborate with one another, and I worried that when put in a hybrid situation, I wouldn't either be able to do that or wouldn't be able to shine as a teacher. So using Google Meet and kind of working out the kinks with working with my sister, working with Larissa, I was able to realize how this could be made possible, which I was really proud of. And yeah, that is my unit plan.